Sorry, I'm late, Mary.
Thanks for being here, Joe. We need 6 for a quorum, I believe, so we're still waiting.
Hi, Mary, I'm here. I'll get my video on in a second. I'm just finishing up. I had a wildlife emergency to respond to.
Thanks, Seth. All right, with Wendy joining us, we do have a quorum. I will go ahead and read the script, and hopefully a couple more can join us in the meantime. Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission is convening by a video conference pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, as extended on July 16th, 2022. This is November 21st. And this meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating remotely via Zoom, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence your phones and other devices. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full names for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or who acts inappropriately. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. If you're not able to participate in the remote meeting, you may also submit comments to the NPNEDC staff, probably Megan Trudell, mtrudell@nantucket-ma.gov is the best contact, although Billy Sod is running the meeting this evening. I am Mary Longacre, Chair of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Seth Engelborg.
Here.
Don Holgate.
Here.
Wendy Hudson.
Here.
Dave Iverson.
Here.
Bert Johnson.
Here.
Nat Lowell should be joining us shortly. Barry Rector.
Here.
Joe Topham.
Here.
I do not see John Trudell at the moment. And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Andrew Vorse.
Here.
Leslie Snell.
Here.
Patrick Reed.
Here.
Billy Sod.
Here. Here.
And we also have Raisa Kwame from Mass DOT.
Here.
Thank you. And anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative when I call your name. So we have Peter Burke, Executive Director of the Nantucket Chamber of Commerce.
Here.
And Andrew, do we have anybody joining us at the moment from Weston and Sampson? I don't see anyone on the screen. Or are they in the, they're not in the attendees. So if they join us, that would be wonderful. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And we have the agenda. Do we have a motion for approval of the agenda or any comments on it? Bert's hand up.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Thank you, Bert.
Second.
Thank you, Barry, for seconding. Roll call vote. Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you all. Is there anyone here with public comment for items that are not on the agenda? We do have a few attendees. Please raise your hands digitally, and we can recognize you. I'm not seeing anything. Billy, do you have anything? No. Okay, so we will move on. I did not receive the minutes of October 24th. I assume we are moving those to the next meeting.
Madam Chair, that's correct. The minutes are not ready yet from the last meeting.
Thank you, Billy. So we will pass on that. And then we have a presentation of the open space and recreation plan. This is an update from the plan that Weston and Sampson were working on. This is our first look at the, I think, final draft. So this is intended to introduce us to what we have to review. It comes in at 398 pages with all the supporting material. And so this is not intended to be a final look. This is a first look. And if we have comments from commissioners with questions or suggestions, we can certainly take a look at those, but we would also like to get written comment in the next couple of weeks, let's say by 3 weeks from today, should be December 12th, so that we can bring that back for a final look, hopefully at the December meeting. Do commissioners have any comments or questions about the open space plan that was distributed last week and included in the packet? I will say that I was very happy to see the continuing theme of the collaboration between the town and the school and the conservation organizations to figure out how the community can benefit from all the different spaces and resources that we have available. Any other commissioners with comments? If there are none, again, I'll encourage you to submit written comments for any aspect of the plan that you want to comment on to the planning department through Megan Trudell, and we will have a look at that again. There's nothing else on the open space plan. Next item on the agenda is Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, Peter Burke. Peter, if you have some recap for us on the summer of 2022 and how that went from a business perspective, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it. See some familiar faces, which is great. I apologize for the lighting. A light bulb went out. It looks like I'm in a bad haunted house movie, but bear with me. If you have any questions, just let me know. Yeah. So the purpose of I sent out the survey to just 100 member.
Peter, excuse me for interrupting. We're having trouble with your
by the
audio.
end of the year, if as a board member. Oh, I apologize. I'm on a fairly strong Wi-Fi. I hope this is a little bit clearer.
That's better, but you
manage
might
that.
turn your video off to see if that improves
Sure.
the audio.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to. I don't have anything to present anyway, so that's probably better. Is that all right?
That sounds much better. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. So the survey that I sent out to membership was meant to be a really kind of top level overview of how kind of 2022 was. And even though we have 800 members on the roll or just under, over this last week and a half, it's obviously been a lot of communication from the chamber about tree lighting and stroll. And while I wish I had sent this out at a different time, we did get 30 respondents. So I'm not going to make any grand assessments based on the 30 responses that we did get. But what was encouraging in that small sample size was essentially just as an overview. We asked what category of business the respondent was, if they experienced growth, remained steady, or a decline in business. We asked for a range % of decline or growth. And then the last two was did you have to modify your business based on understaffing? And then if you had to hire, if you needed to hire people to become fully operational, how many people would that be? And lastly would you be able to house those people, or would they be on their own? So in attempt not to be the group that catches the tiger by the tail with opening Pandora's box on housing in a questionnaire, we felt it was worthwhile to ask that question, because as representing businesses, I feel like there's a lot of really great programming and processes in place from the town's perspective, and all the work that Tucker's doing with his groups, and collectively all of the organizations are really focused on getting long-term year-round affordable housing, and I can't applaud those efforts enough. One of the things I want to make sure we're not completely ignoring is if businesses are feeling like they need to hire up, and a common theme we heard anecdotally was, yes, I can't find anyone to work, and it's not that I can't find anyone to work, I can't find anyone to work and live here. So we were trying to bring data to that answer, to that kind of anecdote. So what we found was, of the 30, we'll call it 29 respondents, we were encouraged that over half said they experienced growth, which was great. So we had, 16 said they experienced kind of rapid growth. And in terms of a category breakdown, again, small sample size, but surprising not many of us that looked at the data, the three of us that in the office that saw it. Takeout food, retail merchandise, and transportation were the three, two respondents of each. So let's not, we're not winning the award for most people responded. But if those are trend indicators, and those, call it 7 of those 15 businesses are going to need to hire up to become fully operational, and all but one of those would need to put the burden of finding housing on their employee, which I currently understand is some businesses can provide housing and some can't. What I am hoping to do is get a bigger aggregate to then bring some more concrete data to the conversation to say, what is the total housing need for next season? Both combine it with year-round, housing opportunities, and then also the short-term housing opportunities. And I say short-term, I really should say seasonal worker, because I understand short-term has a different connotation in the discussions. So I do apologize that the data isn't more complete, but I just felt like the chamber has a responsibility from a, representing island businesses standpoint, that we needed to ask those questions. And I'm hoping between now and the end of the year, I can kind of fill out that data set a little more. But does that make sense of what we're trying to do? I can't say that we knew exactly what we were trying to do, but we felt like we had to ask some questions regarding staffing and housing.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. And I hope when you get the final results that you will send a copy to the planning department so we can see what those are as well.
Sure. I'd be happy to. And I'd also be happy to take any suggestions on ways to tune that questionnaire, because obviously, I don't want to make it too long, but, finding the right questions is half the battle, and making it short enough to encourage higher participation at the risk of not getting all the answers we need. I think those are what we're balancing here, but I would love to continue to be part of that discussion as to overall, what's going on. In terms of the growth numbers, I was encouraged that only 2 of the 29 said they experienced a decline in business. So regardless of sector, for 15 out of 29 to say they experienced over 5% growth and upwards of 18 to 20, that was encouraging, but we want to make sure that's not, masked by fewer options and therefore, fewer wedges in the pie kind of scenario. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it would be interesting to look at, did your membership also change during the period?
Yes, and I should, that's a great question, Mary. I should have provided that over the year we have increased membership, and we're finding it's a very mixed, diverse category of business addition. It's not all restaurants. It's not all retail merchandise. There's a lot of trades. I shouldn't say a lot of trades. There's a lot of professional services. We saw a fair uptick in, and also a few restaurants and a few retail shops here and there. But it's been pretty wide in terms of the categories.
Great. Commissioners with questions or comments from Peter? Wendy, you look thoughtful.
Yeah, I am thoughtful. I'm proud to be one of 30 that responded. So
Yeah, thanks, Wendy.
anytime. Yeah, I'm just trying to think, like, is there a way to get that, get a better response, or, take advantage of Stroll to get like a gut check from people, or I don't have any solutions really there. Incentives, I'll certainly keep thinking. I did think the questions were good regarding, what we all hear things, about staffing and housing, et cetera. But to know how it's really impacting people at the end of the day is another thing. So I'm happy to keep trying to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, and I was also happy that it elicited, I apologize, my video's back on. I was happy that it elicited a few direct responses too. We had a couple of restaurateurs reach out specifically, with their concerns that the chamber overall, and in the run up of the last couple of years, they don't feel has represented them as well as they wanted to. Or there was actually a select board member that reached out and had some comments on what they thought was important, and as an organization. And that's the second half of the piece of the puzzle. That's great. The more engagement we can get, as the better it is, and the more turn those one-off questions about the questionnaire into discussions as to how people really want to see some changes. So I'm hoping that obviously we get more responses, but also that it raises the conversation and the dialogue around it, because we all know it's a very important issue, both economic growth and the housing issue. And I think we have to make sure that we can't just stick our head in the sand as an organization. We have to make sure that we're listening to our members and what they need.
Thank you, Peter. Other comments or questions from commissioners? All right, if there are none, I also want to thank Barry Rector for making the connection to get Peter here as a speaker tonight. Thank you, Barry. And Peter, thanks for coming. We hope to talk to you again sometime soon.
Reach out anytime. Don't be a stranger. You know where the office is. My email, if it's not posted, I'd be happy to send that along to Mary. She can forward it along. But other than that, I'll see you on the next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm seeing a lot of things that look like hands up. I hope I am not cutting anybody off. Okay. Thank you. So next up is a public hearing for the TIP amendment for NRTA low emission vehicles. We had a 21-day comment period that was open. So I'll open the public hearing for that item, and Patrick Reed, our transportation program manager, would you take us through that?
Sure. We also have Paula here who's available for questions. Again, this is a Low-No grant, which was awarded to NRTA. Basically, the TIP is being amended to accept the grant to support their purchase of low or no emission vehicles. I don't know if Paula, you have any clarification on or want to speak to this item at all?
Hi, everyone. Not unless any of the commissioners have any questions that's not already provided.
Questions from commissioners? Bert?
Yeah, do you need a motion from us to approve that?
We'll have a motion to close the public hearing and then a motion to approve it, yes. And since this is a public hearing, if there are any members of the public who are here and want to speak on this topic, please raise your digital hand and let us know. And again, I am not seeing anybody stepping forward for that. So if there are no other comments, we will take a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Bert.
Second.
Thank you, Dawn. So roll call vote to close the public hearing. Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Don Holgate.
Aye.
Wendy Hudson.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Bert Johnson.
Aye.
Barry Rector.
Aye.
Joe Topham.
Aye.
And Mary Longacre, aye. Paula, before you go, I wanted to say thank you for all of your years of service. I don't think we've seen you here at the NPNEDC meeting for a few months at least, and congratulations on your retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I was going to ask if I could just say been a pleasure working with everybody, some of you for 30 years or more.
Yeah.
But it's been a pleasure, and I've always appreciated your support of the Transit Authority and making our services better and helping our community. So thank you, and bye, everybody.
What's this about retiring?
I'm retiring, Bert. I'm out, honey.
Come on, you're just a young kid.
Happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, if there are no other comments from commissioners on this topic, we'll take a motion to approve the change and send that on. Patrick, do I need any specific wording for that motion?
No, just motion to approve the amendment will work.
Thank you.
Moved.
Thank you, Dave. In a second.
Second.
If that's okay.
All right, thank you, Nat. I'll note Nat Lowell is joining the meeting at 5:21. Roll call vote, Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. Next, we'll open the public hearing for the fiscal year 21. Is that right on the agenda, 21, Patrick?
No, that's not
Yeah.
accurate. It should be
Okay.
fiscal year 23.
Thank you. Fiscal year 23, Unified Planning Work Program amendments. We did have a 21-day comment period, which is closed. And Patrick, take us through this one.
Sure, as you had in your packet from last month, this is an amendment to basically reduce the town's overhead rate and reallocate budget, as well as a couple other smaller minor administrative items related to our grants and personnel. Didn't receive any public comments on this. So should it be your pleasure, you can make a motion to approve the amendment to the UPWP.
Thank you, Patrick. Any comments from commissioners? And if there are none, any comments from members of the public who are here? This is a public hearing. I'll wait a moment, but I do not see anyone with a hand up indicating they want to make a comment. So we will take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Nat. Thank you, Don. Roll call vote, Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Any further comments, or we will take a motion to approve the amendment and send it on?
Motion
Next
to
time,
approve,
motion.
sir.
I'll take a motion from Barry.
Second.
Thank you, Nat. Roll call vote, Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you, Patrick. Next up on our agenda is a discussion of the Parking and Traffic Commission. So Patrick has an update for us on the status of that conversation. Patrick?
Sure. So I received some questions regarding the past few select board meetings about the consolidation of BPAC into a group that reviews traffic safety items and parking needs. This really stemmed from paid parking, a presentation I made about paid parking to help the town solidify its decision points if it were to choose to move forward with that, what it would need to do to kind of move that forward. The outcome of that conversation with the select board is that they wanted to establish a commission to look at paid parking. When the town returned to ask for guidance, they brought sort of a proposal about who would be on this advisory parking commission. And the thought was that this body could help shape the direction of parking policy, including paid parking if pursued, but also respond to other parking items. In addition, the initial proposal that I received from the town, it also included consolidating some of the work of the traffic safety group. Or traffic safety work group, which is a group that looks at things like speed, location of yellow lines, things like that. It's a body where the public generally makes requests. It's reviewed by staff in the town, and there's a chance for discussion there. So after kind of seeing the intent was to combine these two items, I suggested adding the BPAC interest in there as well. The rationale here is that, many communities have a single larger transportation commission. For all things transportation, it includes members of the community appointed to represent various transportation interests. And oftentimes these communities, rather than having like a publicly appointed BPAC, they have more of an organic non-government advocacy group who can work outside of government to support their causes, but also get their members appointed to these larger commissions. And my thought was, after seeing the town's proposal, that the town was kind of interested in potentially shifting to that sort of a paradigm. There are a few benefits to that in terms of like bringing people together with different perspectives into the same room. It also reduces staff time spent on sort of liaison activities and admin activities, and opens up a little bit more time for advancing actual priorities. But there are some drawbacks too, because, I think there's a benefit to making sure that every group has its own space, a place to discuss. And so that's one of the things that we heard in response. Additionally, there's a little bit of a complicating factor here because BPAC reports to NP and EDC. And so what the town basically decided was that it was ultimately preferring to focus on traffic and parking only with this new commission. So just the traffic safety work group and parking initiatives. And at its November 9th meeting, the select board voted to approve a body for this new traffic and parking commission, which is comprised of one Nantucket Town Association rep, one advisory committee of non-voting taxpayer representative, one Chamber of Commerce representative, one resident residing within a current parking district, one beyond the current parking district, one representative for the Nantucket Regional Transit Authority, or someone designated by their board, and someone with PE experience. So the intent of this group, again, is to focus on parking, curbside management, loading and unloading for freight, other traffic safety related items like speeds. And with their vote, the select board left open the possibility for NP and EDC amendments to be offered if desired as necessary, based on Chair Longacre's comments at that particular meeting. And so that's basically where the status is today. This group will not move forward, or there won't be any action on this group until a parking coordinator is hired. I'm listed as the transportation program manager is listed as an ex officio member. My understanding is the parking coordinator is the main staff liaison to this group, who will kind of help do the administrative activity, keep things moving forward. And so with that, if you have any comments, we could pass those along. If you're satisfied with the direction that the town is going, I think it's fine to kind of let them know that as well. So whatever your pleasure.
Thank you, Patrick. So this is an opportunity for commissioners to comment on whether or not to have BPAC involvement with this other group, whether we're comfortable with the way this turned out, or if we have any other suggestions that we can pass through Patrick that might help the mission of this particular potential new combined entity. Barry?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I'd like to probably hear from my peers first before I chime on in. I'm sorry, I was a little quick on the gun there.
Any other
I would like,
I'm sorry, Mary. I'm trying to press the hand and it's not working. Sorry.
All right, go ahead, Nat.
Not that I really need it. Okay, so Patrick, thank you for getting your feet wet, I guess, with all this. And we've been communicating. I just want everyone to know I communicate with Patrick a lot about this stuff downtown, and kind of like one of my other lives that I live to try to solve some of these things small with little Nantucket solutions, not big ones, small ones. And Patrick, I know it has nothing to do with us and it's not our decision, but the traffic safety work group members have been sort of set up for a long time the way it is. And they look at things similar to like second curb cuts at the planning board downtown. You know, when there's a second curb cut in the core district, it's a big deal. Like 39 Fair the other day, and there's plenty of others. So that they have a lot of experience. You get the fire chief, police chief, Art's been doing it for almost 20 years, I believe. And he's like the staff person with his, all his, ways of doing it because of his job. He can make sketches and draw things, and you know what I mean? Like you would do, but there was nobody here for a couple of years. So he took it over from Mike, I'm sure you already know that. So I personally think that the town we need to have that kind of level of thinking for certain requests. Like people that just, off the cuff get appointed to this committee could end up with people that, may think they're not thinking the same way as people that are doing it all the time. You know what I mean? Like when we get letters sent in and people complaining about certain things, like some of these curb cuts that we have to look at. That one on Westchester Street, it comes to mind with traffic safety. There was a lot of controversy there. You really get into some serious conversation. I mean, and it's not easy to do. It's not easy to deal with. So I'm concerned that this may be getting too, I don't want to say simplified, but focused on like where one group can do it, and it really isn't, it might not work right. I'm concerned about that. I mean, I'd like to be on this group, but the people that have been on traffic safety have been doing it a long time, and it's just like starting fresh, like scratch. It seems, I don't know, it doesn't seem or feel right to me. I think we need to do things slightly different. I think the parking person needs to be working with you and maybe adding some people to traffic safety so that they can get the gist of some of the things that they look at. Sight lines. I mean, there's a million things that get sent to them. It's unbelievable. I get their agenda and it's a lot, so I just don't know what you think about it. You've only been here a short time, but you've seen what traffic safety is like with Coffin Street, for example, in town. I know you've been working on that. See what I mean about a place that doesn't have a good answer? That's a perfect one right there, Patrick, is that Coffin Street problem. Sometimes fixing things on Nantucket makes it worse in a lot of cases. That was one of them.
Well, now
So
let's
anyway,
keep the conversation to the committees themselves, right?
Yeah, I know.
Before them.
I'm just trying to give examples, that's all. Sorry. So Patrick, I'm just asking what do you think this is going to turn out like? I mean, I just don't want to see something that works get broken to fix something.
Yeah, I have, I'll be honest, I kind of, my inclination is to offer suggestions, but really defer to what you all want and what you think will work the best. You all have been here longer than me. You know how decisions are made and how effective decisions are made and actualized. I think, from my perspective, I was concerned about potentially situations where you have different groups advocating for different things and volleying staff back and forth. That can sometimes be a challenge. And some of these larger cities that I do have experience in, where they do have a single commission, there are benefits to that because you do get multiple perspectives in the same place. And the burden really isn't on staff then, but it kind of is on the folks in the room to talk and work it out. And it builds this sort of collegiality that I think is helpful and important, particularly in this day and age where, everybody kind of lives in their own silo. That being said, I do agree with you, Nat. I mean, I think some of these decisions are very, very particular, right? And context sensitive. And I think the work that the traffic safety work group has been doing is always, from my limited knowledge of it. I mean, I've only been here a few months, but seems really well done and well thought out. And generally everybody is pretty much on the same page. And when we aren't on a decision, there's a lot of great discussion that happens around those sorts of items. So, I can kind of see both sides. I think the paid parking item is one that sort of folks are trying to find it a home, and that makes sense because it's a great topic to discuss and to think about. The town's been looking at it for 10 years, so it's probably a good to kind of move it along and figure out what you want to do with it. And it does need a home to kind of have those discussions take place. But the question is, where's the right home? And I think, it's not a bad thing to try something new. However, if you all feel very strongly that you're satisfied with the way things are, I think it's okay to provide comments to the select board too in that regard.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's go to Seth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I am in favor of consolidating the groups. I hear what Nat's saying, but I think that there's a benefit from, having all kind of transportation things in one place, especially when you get into things like how we're going to deal with downtown parking. There's going to be a lot of pushback, and some of the work is going to have to be advocacy for alternative transportation, and without considering things like micromobility or extended public transit, they're not going to be effective. I hear you, Nat, about requiring, expert experience for some of these traffic safety issues, but we have lots of committees within the town that have specific requirements for the committee members. Like the Agricultural Commission requires people who are farmers. The Airport Commission requires people who are within the aviation industry. So make some of the seats restricted to people with, an engineering background or a traffic safety background, and I think it solves a problem there.
Seth, can I ask for clarification? When you started off, you said combining the committees. Did you mean the two committees, the Parking Commission and Traffic Safety Work Group, or the three with the addition of BPAC?
All three, including BPAC.
Thank you. Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that did cross my mind as related to BPAC is some of the work that they're doing right now. It's very much oriented toward the work that the current traffic safety work group does, just like reviewing certain signs, seeing if they're appropriate at certain locations. And that's sort of why I thought to myself, well, and maybe it makes sense to kind of house BPAC and traffic safety work group together. The other thing that is interesting and very particular to Nantucket is that, I am the staff liaison to BPAC right now, but most of the work and the sort of direction they want to go is town related things that really the DPW would take care of through like a service request. And I'm happy to kind of facilitate those connections and try to keep things on their radar. But from my perspective, in some ways, I'm sort of an extra step in the process, which I don't mind doing. I love BPAC stuff. I'm really big on bicycle and pedestrian mobility, but I also kind of wonder, is there a more efficient path to travel? And that's sort of why I wondered if it made sense to look at some of the work that BPAC was doing and think about if it had any synergy with traffic safety work group. Just a little extra context there, because I think it might help explain the rationale for why I made the suggestions that I did. And again, I don't have a particularly strong feeling one way or another. I think the success of a group really depends on the people who are in it and their willingness to work together to advance something rather than the composition of a group.
Thank you, Patrick. Dave?
Thank you, Mary. I just want to chime in. I mean, I think Patrick's onto something. BPAC and traffic safety seem to maybe be better together, and parking remains the same in my opinion. I just think there's a lot of crossover there. So I think, in my opinion, it makes more sense to have traffic safety and BPAC maybe combine and leave traffic on their own. I mean, leave parking on their own. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Barry?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to be a fan of combining all three, and I'll tell you a few reasons why very quickly. You're right. When it comes to traffic safety and BPAC, there is a lot of overlap, and I think learning to consolidate those two together will begin to make some sense instead of letting them kind of duel it out with each other, or all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, they came across this, and what about that? So here's a chance for merging those two functions together, which I see coordinate really well. The other thing, as we're getting into other modes of transportation now, like e-bikes and stuff, the issues become a little bit more complex about how those two begin to interrelate to each other, does it start boiling into traffic safety at times? The third thing is, if you're going to do paid parking, you're going to have to look at doing a lot of reorganization to things that have gone on in the downtown area. Part of that is going to include, how do you deal with your pedestrians? How do you deal with your bikes? So here's an opportunity, I think, to coordinate all three groups together and maybe make a little bit of sense out of how they're all going to have all these different philosophies function together. The last thing I want to say is, well, you know what? If it's not working real well, we can always go back to where we started. And that's a perfectly good way to do it. Lesson learned. It's important to walk away from what lessons you did learn. And then you can go back and reintegrate. So you can go back and basically reformulate the groups as you need to. But I think it's worth a try. I think it's a unique opportunity here. And we should be bold enough to support where that needs to go to and see how it works out. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Being on BPAC and trying to put all these together, I think there's just going to be too many layers. I think if you can have the three groups and work on it, and then maybe make a group that everyone goes up to, or say there's like 3 or 4 from each group that can work on it together, I think would make more sense. I think that BPAC, we're going to be overwhelmed with the e-bikes and the pedestrians. I think it's really be completely in its own world, and I think the traffic is something, and the parking is something that's going to be completely different. But I think that they all need to meet and come together in some ways. Seth is going to attend BPAC, and so he may feel his own opinion. But I feel like there's just too many layers at this moment right now, and I think BPAC is just getting started. Starting our meetings again, and I think if we were at a certain area where we were comfortable, we had something solid in place, I could see all 3 committees coming together. But right now, I think we're all back in our infancy. So I could see, kind of like I'm on the planning board, but I'm also NP&C and I'm on crack. And I think that you all come up to one area. I think that works better. I think having off 3 separate groups coming to one larger group makes more sense in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So my concern, I can see the benefits of having one group address the many issues, but I have 2 concerns. One is first that pedestrians and cyclists would lose their voice because they'd be drowned out by the number of people addressing car issues or advocating for cars over pedestrians and cyclists. So that's a concern, and one reason why I would appreciate the value of having a separate bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee. The second concern is more logistical. How would you merge those groups, considering that BPAC is a subcommittee of the NP and EDC, and how would that affect our information flow? How would that affect our planning process? So those are questions that I don't think were addressed in the proposal to merge all 3 committees. And I wonder if perhaps alternate structures could be found, for instance, having joint meetings of the committees every quarter to address issues together, and then having the committees meet on their individual topics the other 2 months, or other potential solutions for that issue. We've got a lot of traffic issues, there's certainly no question, and I appreciate all the people who are devoting their time to addressing them. Dawn, go ahead.
I think that this is something that could evolve over time, but I would caution to keep BPAC separate for now. I think this parking coordinator and committee on parking and traffic, it's going to be a tremendous job getting this going. And I feel like the bike and pedestrian things that BPAC weighs in on could kind of get lost in the shuffle for a while. So maybe it is something that can be combined in a different way in the future, but I think it should wait and have some more thought given to it at this point. And I think Jason was pretty much of that opinion, and he's been involved in BPAC for a pretty long time. So that's just just my input. If we do move forward with paid parking, it's going to get instituted, and then it's going to have, I'm sure, have to have tremendous tweaks over time to really make it work properly and respond to the demand here. So that's it.
Thank you, Dawn. Other comments from commissioners? Okay, I'll note that we do have a member of the public with their hand up, but this is not a public hearing, so I would encourage you to send your comments directly to Patrick Reed because he is at the heart of this entire conversation. If there are no further comments on this issue, Patrick?
Yeah, I was just to distill the conversation. I think where the select board left it is basically how Ms. Holgate kind of described it. They said, we'll move forward with this traffic and parking commission when it's ready. And when we have a parking coordinator on board, until that time, traffic safety work group will continue their mission. BPAC will continue its mission. And the intent was to leave BPAC sort of separate. And so basically, based on your comments, it sort of sounds like NP and EDC is advocating for no comment or no action, and to just follow that path, which might be the simplest. So I just wanted to distill that and see if that was sort of a good summary of the conversation that you guys had.
That sounds good to me, Patrick. Do I see any head nods or dissent? I didn't ask for a motion because this decision is not our decision to make. And I'll note John Trudell is joining us at 5:45 p.m.
Yeah, Mary, can I just make to kind of summarize a little on this? I think what you said, Mary, what Joe said, what Don said was kind of like the same thing from three different people, but it was right on, I think. Trying to keep BPAC kind of separate is the right thing. I'm sorry I was kind of jumping in on some of the other pieces to this that I'm sort of kind of involved with a little bit, just a little, and I just feel sensitive to the traffic safety committee's work and what they've done for so long, and it's hard to get things done. But it may evolve, as Don said, and I agree with that too. So I think you're right. You just leave it as long as, I think we should keep BPAC though, in its current form or constitution that it has.
Thank you, Nat.
So that's it for me. Thank you.
Any further comments from commissioners on this topic?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Seth?
Thank you. And I'm fine with proceeding as is, and because we can always reevaluate in the future. I will just say, I disagree that combining, bicycle and pedestrian issues with these other issues will cause them to get lost. I actually think they'll elevate them to a conversation of importance. I understand that there might be a whole lot of work in the short term to deal with, a parking management system. But I think once some of that stuff gets online, really the goal here is to not only have a parking management system, but it's, at least in my opinion, is to educate and incentivize alternative forms of transportation. And we can't do that without the people who are responsible for awareness of bicycle and pedestrian issues involved. So I do think it's, at some point, it makes sense to, maybe it doesn't need to be one commission. Maybe it can just be some joint meetings, but I think it does make sense to have them talk together in the future.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, moving on to the next topic, Transportation Program Manager update. So everything else you have going on, Patrick.
All right. Sorry, I'll try to keep this one quick. Quick update on the WPI loading study. Students from WPI, they're continuing to work on their project related to freight operations and needs in town. They've interviewed several different stakeholders and interested parties, and they're beginning to organize some initial recommendations. Right now, the plan is to break out these recommendations into buckets. So sort of the the small lower hanging fruit, things that you can achieve pretty easily. And then a couple buckets that are a little bit more challenging or involved or long-term. Thanks to the folks on this call who've helped spend time with the students. Hopefully we can use this as sort of a springboard to realize some of the smaller improvements, as well as articulate some involved future opportunities related to freight management in town. And I'll tell you that I've learned so much from these guys. They've done quite a bit of research and just had a lot of conversations with people in the freight community who are working in town. So many thanks to the kids from WPI. Website updates related to sort of the general organization of the transportation planning website. I wanted to let you know that I'm working to do a couple updates to some of these pages here. I've been working with the outreach coordinator in town who manages the web. The goal here is threefold: to improve users' ability to find information that they're looking for, improve access to federally required public review documents, and then provide a bit more information about regional planning, just because I think oftentimes there's a little bit of confusion about regional planning versus what the town is working on. And people coming to me with things that, get referred to like a DPW service request. So that sort of thing, I'm trying to make it a little bit easier for folks to navigate. And we're working on that. In tandem with that, we're also adding a long range transportation plan page. So getting that prepared. So you'll recall that you reviewed a questionnaire in your last packet from last month. The outreach coordinator has been extremely helpful in helping me translate that. And then we'll get that up soon. We're hoping to get that up in the late November timeframe, but right now I'm thinking it's more likely we'll get that up first, second week of December. Quick update on the state's long-range transportation plan. The state is also in the process of updating their own long-range transportation plan, and they've branded it Beyond Mobility. So MassDOT is hoping that 2 community groups would be interested in participating in what they're calling a meeting in a box. My understanding is that this would be facilitated by MassDOT with some MP and EDC staff support from myself. I think it can be virtual, but MassDOT's particularly looking for a non-local government participation. So like a community group, something like that, that's not necessarily related to town government, that might have a perspective about transportation. If you know anyone who's interested in participating, please do reach out to me and we can help kind of get that set up. The Bike Ped Advisory Committee is slated to meet next week after the holiday. So we'll post the agenda soon. Right now, it's just continuing the conversations that we've had previously about micromobility. Now that the new legislation in Massachusetts sort of moved forward related to e-bikes, and then also an update on the so-called nuisance stop signs. Couple quick comments about open grants in motion and grants in motion. We continue to have 3 grants awaiting decision: the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. We don't have any feedback from the feds on that yet. However, I talked to some folks in other regions and they told me they're in the same boat. So we're all kind of waiting eagerly to see what will happen with that one. The Federal Land Access Program grant, which you'll recall, we already have 2 of these grants awarded for that path design out to Wowinet's Gatehouse. That we have an open grant for that for around 800 or so thousand. We were told that we can expect a decision rather soon. They're starting to review, and the way they've set it up is they've put projects from the eastern half of the United States into buckets to review. So they've already started that. So that's great. Complete Streets. This is a grant that we applied for related to Pleasant, Sparks, and Williams, with the focus on Pleasant Street between 5 Corners and the roundabout. No word on this one, so still open. I wanted to excuse me, I wanted to let you know too that I'm also working on a Mass Trails grant to get some funding for a bike path connection on the north side of Milestone Road between Monomoy and Pulpus. The town had actually applied for this grant opportunity for Mass Trails previously to kind of fill that gap, and the project scored really well according to the Mass Trails manager. So we're going to give it another go in this cycle. And that's basically it for now. I'd be happy to answer any other comments or answer any other questions about specific projects that you might have.
So Patrick, just quickly, I know that BPAC has only just started meeting and that micromobility has been a topic of discussion. Do you anticipate that BPAC will have recommendations for town meeting articles? Or do you think that that's not something that you're going to be focused on coming up?
You know, we've met twice with the focus on micromobility, sort of in one meeting where I provided an overview presentation. It depends. It's really at the discretion of the group. If they feel ready to cook something up, I think that's totally fine. Some of the conversations that we've had and the charge that I've really had is figuring out what we're able to do, what authority that the town has for its own side pass in terms of like regulating speed and things like that. And then on the enforcement side, the logistics, if that's really viable from the perspective of others who'd be responsible for having to enforce these things. And so that's what I'll be going over with BPAC when we meet next week. Yeah, it's totally up to their discretion. If they want to move a recommendation forward, that would make sense. This is sort of a weird situation related to BPAC again here, is because they typically, you know, they report to us, but as my understanding is, the regulation would be something that the town would be interested in. So the question becomes where to address our comments. Maybe that's something we can get some clarity on. Would we send them to the NP and EDC, or should we send them to, you know, another party? I think would be helpful.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, any other questions or comments for Patrick on his update? Not seeing any hands. So the next item is the discussion of 2023 annual town meeting list of warrant articles of potential planning concern. So I'll note this is just an early look. We have 3 different lists that were provided in the packet. We have the citizen warrant articles, the select board's potential topics for warrant articles, and the planning department's potential topics for warrant articles. This is an opportunity for commissioners to ask questions about where those might be headed. And to, I guess, offer any suggestions if we have them, specifically to the planning department. But those 3 lists were provided in the packet. And Andrew, do you want to introduce any of that information?
Sure, I can. Again, I think most of you are fairly familiar with, you know, the schedule and the calendar as it rolls along here in regard to town meeting. The citizen articles are now set, so there's 26 of them, which is actually rather a low number compared to years past. 16 of those are related to zoning, and 10 are related to other issues that will be reviewed at least first by, or actually will be reviewed and have a recommendation from the Finance Committee. Zoning articles, as you know, go before the planning board for a recommendation, and then the Finance Committee weighs in on whether they agree with the planning board's suggestion or may offer a different one. So at this point, this is, again, just to introduce what these articles will be. We have a specific agenda item that will occur at a future meeting to discuss which of these might be of planning concern and what comments might be. So this is here for you all to get thinking about it, and probably will be on the December, I'm thinking probably December to, on the December agenda, to make sure that if there are comments from the Planning Commission, they're received by the Finance Committee or the Planning Board for their hearings.
Thank you, Andrew. Excuse me. Questions or comments from commissioners? Again, this is not intended as a deep dive on any individual article, just an overview of what's before us. All right, seeing none. Am I missing? Did I miss someone? Sorry, I heard an up. And this is, again, not an opportunity for public comment. This is just to get a look at what's on the table for the town meeting. And we will come back, as Andrew said, potentially in December and have more discussion on them. All right, if there are no comments on this topic, we'll move on. Discussion of the NP and EDC mission. So if you remember, we have been looking at various documents that are foundational to NP and EDC over the last several meetings. And Andrew has provided information about the planning board, which he is going to introduce to us. And his point was that we need to understand the the difference between the planning board and the NPNEDC. So Andrew, would you go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this, as you said, this is a follow-up of the outline that we discussed at the last meeting and had some general discussion about what kind of, I guess, parameters we'd look at when we consider updating the NPNEDC's enabling legislation. One of the topics was that especially important in a one community region, unlike the other 12 of 13 in Massachusetts, is that we didn't want to, I guess, tread on other town agencies' own authority or their ability to make plans and other things that are contained in their legislation. So as the more I looked at this, I realized that, and from discussions with both the chair and the vice chair during the agenda setting, that we needed to take a look at the planning board legislation and consider that in fact there are significant sort of overlaps with what the planning board is basically created to do, especially under Chapter 4181D, which is the master plan section, and what is stated in the NPNEDC legislation. So if we could go through
excuse me, Billy, can you put that on the screen? Thank you.
So one of the, I think, something I've heard, which is basically incorrect, and I think you all need to understand this, is that the planning board, while it has specific responsibilities on subdivisions and A&R plans and site review, it also, one of its primary responsibilities is the comprehensive master plan under this chapter 4181D. And the 2009 plan that was unanimously adopted at town meeting basically is the first plan to follow this specific legislation. It is interesting to note that the term master plan and comprehensive plan are both used in 4181D. So they're really an interchangeable reference. We'd go to the next slide, Billy. So again, as part of the powers and duties, what in some towns, basically the planning board hires and supervises a planner. Our charter basically made the planning board part of the municipal oversight boards, along with other boards represented on the NPNEDC, including the Conservation Commission. In that charter, and in an amendment to that charter some years ago. So again, I'm not sure that everybody is aware of the full responsibilities of the planning board, but really to set this record straight, I think this was important to review with you all. Next slide, please. Again, I think there was, at the last meeting, we talked quite a bit about economic development. In the master plan itself is a specific section about economic development, which is basically section 4 of the master plan. So, and again, this could be assigned to another entity, or another entity could be involved with this. I will say that in the plan that we've adopted from 2009, at least the lead agency on economic development was the select board. And I think that came about because of, number one, setting overall policy. Number two, there was quite a bit of land specifically under the control of the select board, both at the bunker area, including the airport, and other areas where economic development basically was going to, future economic development, at least not related to tourism and other things, might take place. So again, I think this review was important. At some time, and again, we've talked about at least a review of the mission comparing us to other communities and other other of the 12 regions, which remember that our planning commission is advisory and which is pretty much consistent with all except for the Cape Cod and the Vineyard, which basically have regulatory function. Section 1 of our enabling legislation, which is listed here, in order to plan for the orderly and coordinated development and protection of the physical, social, and economic resources of the island. So again, I think there's a specific reference to the physical environment in the planning board enabling legislation. Social and economic are sort of unique in our particular legislation. I guess that's where I will sort of end it for tonight. At our next meeting, I'm going to hope to send out some additional reading material for you all about some of the basic enabling legislations of the committees that are represented on the Planning Commission. I do think it's important, though, to get to, I guess, some discussion about whether the planning board, you know, and I've talked to certain individual members, and I don't believe that any of the planning board members have stated that they wish to give up their responsibilities under their particular legislation. It's a topic that came up before. And again, when you consider what the Cape and the island can do by some of their procedures can basically remove projects from the individual towns, or the towns can surrender individual projects to the Cape Cod Commission for review. But I think that's an important consideration here that I think that we kind of need some agreement on before going too much further considering the level of overlap here. So there'll be other times to discuss, I think, membership and funding and all kinds of other things, but at least this is what I would call mission 1.0 here. And at our December meeting, I think we'll certainly continue the mission discussion if Chairwoman allows. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. So one of the things that Andrew said a few months ago that caught my attention was that 2023 is the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the NP&EDC, and it's inspiration for reflection. You know, given that the select board and the town administration are in charge of the town, and the select board sets policy, and the select board now has strategic goals, given that the planning board has certain legal responsibilities, given that we are a one town region, and given that we want to work cooperatively with, you know, efficient town government operations, you know, what is our mission? How do we envision carrying it out? How do we work with the other entities in the town? I think those are great questions, and this is a good time for us to be examining them. So I would encourage everybody to give that some thought. And as Andrew mentioned, we'll plan to come back in December and have a further discussion on that. And then that discussion should inform, as Andrew said, you know, membership and other questions about the NP&EDC. Any comments or further questions from commissioners on this topic? All right, I'm seeing none. So getting back to the agenda, the next item is our 2023 meeting schedule. Billy, would you put that up on the screen? And so again, primarily we meet the third Monday of the month. We had to make a couple adjustments for holidays, as is normal. And I want to point out to people the adjustment in February is to a Thursday evening. That's because of President's Day being on the third Monday of the month, and the following Monday probably being part of school vacation. So Thursday seemed like the better choice. Hopefully that will work for everybody with enough advance notice. And if anybody has any comments on the schedule,
Will that be sent out to us, Mary?
it's in the packet, Bert,
Okay, thank you.
but I'm sure we can send it again if you need it. Andrew, do we need a motion to adopt this, or is it simply informational?
You could, we should adopt, so yeah, motion will be fine.
We'll accept a motion to adopt this schedule for 2023.
So moved.
Thank you, Dave.
I'll second.
Second.
Thank you, Joe, for
Joe.
seconding. Roll call vote, Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
John Trudell,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you. Excuse me. Other committee reports and updates. Raisa, you're always so patiently sitting through our meetings. Do you have anything from Mass DOT that you want to convey?
Good evening, everyone. I do not have any updates at this time. Patrick covered most of the information that should be shared, so thank you very much.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to you. Other committee reports or updates? If there are none, Patrick or Andrew, anything else to be added? Our next meeting is Monday, December 19th at 5 p.m. Reminder to review the various topics that we've discussed. That was the open space plan, the town meeting articles, the mission of the NPNEDC, and please do come back with comments and questions on those topics. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
Mary?
Bert?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, but could someone resend me that package? I didn't get it apparently.
Okay,
Thank you. And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
thank you, Don. Roll call vote, Seth Engelborg,
Aye.
Don Holgate,
Aye.
Wendy Hudson,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Bert Johnson,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Barry Rector,
Aye.
Joe Topham,
Aye.
John Trudell,
Aye.
and Mary Longacre, aye. Thank you all. We'll see you next month, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanksgiving. Bye all.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, Mary. Have a good night.